Welcome to the Newsmakers Podcast. I'm Billy Hollowell, and this is a show where we go behind the headlines every day to bring you an interview with a pastor, entertainer, politician, or other notable news figure. And this is a show, again, it's daily, but it's based on our weekly TV show, which is also called Newsmakers. You can watch it on the CBN News channel and also on our YouTube page. And on this show, every day, we dive deep. It's a little more longer form with one of the people who you will often see on our Newsmakers show or across the CBN News platforms. On today's Newsmakers, Joe Kennedy joins us to share all about his journey of praying on the 50-yard line, losing his job, and fighting all the way to the Supreme Court. With no further ado, here is Joe Kennedy. So let's start with coaching, right? We'll get into the Supreme Court victory, the book, the movie, all the things that are going on. What led you into coaching?
That was a total God thing. I didn't know anything about football. I just got out of the Marine Corps. I didn't want to do anything. I thought I was retired. I was out on a run one day, and the athletic director kind of saw this guy with a shirt on that said Bremerton, and call it coincidence, whatever. He pulls up alongside and started a conversation with me, found out I was a Marine, and he said, have you ever thought about coaching? So I was approached, and I was like, no, not interested. He just kept pursuing me. It must have been, divine intervention. And eventually I watched the movie Facing the Giants. And, those Kendrick guys, man, they put a hurting on my heart. And God just spoke to me and said, hey, this is your calling. And that's where it all came from. And I accepted the job of being a coach. And I took it right out of the movie to give God the glory after every game. That was my covenant.
Now, you weren't always a Christian. You were an atheist at one point. So talk about that a little bit. What was it that brought you into faith?
So it was really my wife. I was failing as a husband. I was previously married, and a couple times I ruined those marriages. I was terrible. I just, everywhere I went, I seemed to just wreck people's lives. And even though I feel like I lived for the world and I was very successful in that, only thing I really wanted was to be married to this girl, this lady that I've been in love with my whole life since we were kids. We met when we were 9. This is my opportunity right at the end of my career. We reconnect. Well, she was a good Christian girl. She was going to church. So we got married, and I was failing. As a husband, as a father, it was horrible, and things were just disintegrating in front of me. And I finally went to church with her, and as things were rapidly falling apart, I had no other place to turn. And I fell onto the altar, and I kind of made a deal with God. I'm always a wheeling and dealing guy. And I said, God, if you give me my wife, I'll give you my life. And my wife saw that of me submitting everything, and where two become one, that makes sense to me now. And we did become one, and God's been the center of it, and just has led us. I didn't know he was really going to use my life like he did.
You got to be careful with your prayers.
I know, especially with that guy.
Yeah, exactly. You end up obviously flashing forward into the coaching thing. Prayer becomes a big piece of that for you. You're honoring that on the 50-yard line. What were your thoughts when that started to become a problem for people, when they started to not like that you were praying on the 50-yard line? What was your initial reaction to that?
Yeah, I couldn't understand it. Something so simple as a prayer. And I didn't want to create waves with the school. Now, they told me to stop praying with the players. That was unfortunate, but I said, fine, this is your school, your rules. I never prayed with my team again, ever. So I thought this was going to be fine. I just continue on doing what I originally set out to do, was praying by myself, thanking God. I did that. Now, when they told me I couldn't no longer do that because people could still see me in public praying.
Because you were doing it after the game.
After the game.
At the 50-yard line. Yep. On your own. You would go out. People could join you if they wanted. Or they could choose not to.
Right.
Okay.
But I was alone.
Right.
And yeah, that's where the rub came. And they finally gave me a letter of direction that said I needed to choose between my faith and my job. And I was going to be put on suspension until I complied with the school district's policies. So that was a no-win situation. No American should have to choose between their faith and their job. That's just not a good place to be. Not in America.
Well, and you chose to, a lot of people, they step away. They don't want to engage in the legal battle that follows, because the legal battle that followed was a lot of attention. You've done a lot of interviews, you've been out there, you've had to talk about it, and you become a target in some ways. Some people love you, and then other people on the other side, they come after you. But it doesn't really matter, because you won the Supreme Court case. You took this to the Supreme Court, you won, and it was a much bigger case than just your case. It spoke to religious liberty in general in this country and really clarified some of the debating that's gone on, and you had a victory. What was it like to win that victory?
For the personal side of it, it kind of made me feel good knowing that I was right and the First Amendment was live and well. The freedom of speech and the free exercise, those two things are live and well. And that part of me was really where I started, because only thing I wanted to do was be a coach and to be able to pray after a game. That's what I originally was set out to do. I had no idea it was going to expand the way that it did. But the great thing about the Supreme Court is they opened it up, and we have more religious liberty now than we ever had in the past 50 years. So that is just refreshing. The thing that I really was afraid of is that the lower court standing, because I lost 7 times on the way to the Supreme Court. If the lower court standing would have been kept in place, anybody that showed any religious signs in their workplace could have been terminated. I would have ruined it for everybody. So that was my biggest fear. So the winning wasn't my focus. It was not losing. So.
Right, yeah. Let me not lose this for everyone and not
exactly.
just myself. It's an interesting journey, and you and I have interviewed many times throughout this journey, so it's interesting to be on the other side of it now. You've written a book, Average Joe. You have a film coming. What made you want to sort of tell the story in a different way like that?
Well, I wanted people, they see the headlines. Everybody sees just the headlines. They have no idea who I am. They think, oh, well, this guy is somebody. No, I am nobody. And that's why I titled it Average Joe. Yeah, I actually think I'm a little below average. So, but it's amazing that God could take something so simple and such a simple guy like me and turn it into something incredible. This was not newsworthy. This was not something that you would think would, be worth a movie, a book, and everything. But it shows. I wanted everybody to see from the beginning where I came from, unwanted pregnancy, foster homes, all of that, the backstory, to see what led me to be the guy to stand up for what was right and what has happened since then.
When it comes to the film, what was that process like? Whenever you say, okay, I'm going to allow someone to tell my story in that way, because it's not just when you're writing, you control it. When it's visual and it's not you playing yourself, you're not necessarily as in control. And even if you are at the end, it's kind of strange to watch yourself, I would imagine, and your story play out. So what was that process like for you?
Yeah. So signing the life rights away was the worst thing I think I ever did. You're reading it and you are giving your rights away. They could have made me out to be anything and take creative, whatever they wanted to do with my life. That was harder than signing oath of enlistments. And when they started putting it together, everything in my life is free game. They could show everything. So there's nothing to hide. Everybody in America is going to see every part, not just my life, but my wife's life. And that's huge to me. And really, really weird that, my life's going to be on a screen. That's weird.
It is. No, it is. It'll be interesting to see it and watch it and see how people respond, and getting a chance to tell the story in a different way. I want to ask you this, because it's few people have been in the position that you've been in, where you're at the center of a huge Supreme Court case, and people will dig up things and then they'll take details about your life and they'll advance narratives about you, or even some of the things you mentioned from your past. We all have those things in our past, right? What was that part like, to navigate sort of watching the attacks that came and to have to sort of think, man, I can't respond to every one of these things and I can't clarify them, but they're out there in a different way maybe, or an inaccurate way even.
Right. And that's, I struggle with that really at the beginning, because I wanted to engage every single person. They troll you every single day. And I just wanted open communication to get an understanding of why they thought what they thought. And a lot of times it was just miscommunication, and I wanted to communicate with people. So that's why we really did the book and the movies, to fill in the gaps of everything. Now, people are going to think what they're going to think, and they could dig up anything on me. I'm not even a great Christian now. I'm horrible. I'm a bad person. I'm struggling every single day, but by the grace of God, and I get a new chance every single day.
Well, everybody does it. Even if those things were true, which I'm not saying any of them were, it would have nothing to do with your case or anybody else's. The case was about the merits of whether or not you could pray on the 50-yard line and have the freedom to do that.
Absolutely.
So these are often distractions that happen in these cases where people conjure up or take things and, but it seemed like you handled that well. And at the end of the day, when all is said and done, what do you want your legacy to be in light of how big this case was?
I really wanted just to be known as a pretty good coach. I never wanted to be the praying coach or anything like that. I just want my legacy to be that anybody could do the right thing and how simple it is. Prayer. I can't think of anything simpler. And it doesn't have to be a big spectacle in front of anybody. Just pray. The power of prayer is so incredible. Just start praying. And don't be ashamed of who you are in your faith, especially this day and age when we talk diversity, equity, and inclusion. That includes everybody. Be diversified. Say your prayers. Be who you are. Don't be ashamed of your faith. Live it out. We're Americans. You can do that.
Final question for you. Some of the students, caught up in all of this, right? You were coaching. There were students, there were families, there's a community. I'm sure different opinions among them, but what are some of the positive things you've heard? I would imagine your stand had an impact on some of those young people.
Yeah, these kids were great. To see them grow up, I've been to so many of them getting married, to see them getting married, being at their weddings, some funerals, which is horrible. It's like you're burying your kids, going to their graduation, seeing them have kids. It's incredible to see them and knowing that you had this little tiny part in their life, but you're still involved with them. I'll never forget them, and it's cool that they haven't forgotten me.
That's amazing. Well, as always, it was wonderful getting a chance to sit down with you today.
Thank you, brother.
That's all for today's Newsmakers podcast. Be sure to tune in for the next episode of the show, and also head over to the CBN News YouTube channel and the CBN News channel to watch Newsmakers every week. We'll see you soon.